We should be on the second person now, or almost done. All right, 10 seconds. Five seconds. Perfect. So we can stop there. Hello? Great. Do you feel like you know the people in the room now a bit better? Yes? What's one thing they say they're looking forward to? Shout. Anything? Meeting new people? Wonderful. Anything else? Did you get to the question of what are you looking forward to? Learning. Ah, wonderful. All right, last one, third one. No? Oscar, you look like you want to say something. Having conversations with peer. Perfect. And that is why we are here today. Today is all about connection. We are talking about transforming the future, and the truth is no single organization can do it alone, right? It is all about partnerships, and partnerships are forged through conversations like the ones we are having today. So welcome so much. My name is Elizabeth Mururi. I'll be guiding you through the program for the pre-summit, and then after that we'll get into the gala dinner. So to kick us off and set the tone for today or this afternoon, I want to invite the director and the founder of Relinked Group. The reason we are here today. How many of us know Seth? Great. For those who do not, you're about to know him. So Seth, karibu sana. He is the reason that we are here today, and we really appreciate the effort of him and the team in putting this together. So Seth.
Good afternoon. It's now better. My name is Seth Jaoko, founder Relinked Group and the convener of this summit. I'm really glad and happy that you're here today. And we are expecting to interact, to hear your impact stories, and to learn more about your organizations. Before I continue, let me acknowledge our sponsors, the people who have made this possible, and indeed all of you. So we have Green Africa Group. They have been a good supporter of us. Let's give a round of applause for Green Africa Group. Let's acknowledge Oracle Academy. Let's also acknowledge Brigham Foundation. Kingdom Bank Limited, I don't know whether they have arrived. Yes, and our media production partner, Tech6 Africa. They are responsible for taking this digitally online, and we are actually live right now on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Relinked Network. Yeah, so if you have friends at home or colleagues who want to follow this, just let them know that we are live on YouTube, on Relinked Group, Relinked Network YouTube channel. So changing the world is not simple. It's not, changing systems is not simple, and that's why we have created this dynamic collaborative platform bringing together diverse change makers for learning, networking, and building partnerships to drive long-term impact. And that's why we are here today, just joining forces to drive long-term impact. So by connecting individuals, organizations across sectors, this summit uplifts innovative efforts. It amplifies the work of those driving tangible impact, from hyperlocal solutions to national and global initiatives. And at the gala dinner later on, we will meet organizations from diverse backgrounds, from corporate to local initiatives, to the grassroots level. So we're bringing across from diverse backgrounds, from diverse sectors. Yeah, so I hope majority of us will stay for the gala dinner. Are we all of us staying for the gala? Yeah, so welcome. And I want to wish you a great time. Let's enjoy, let's interact, let's network, let's learn, let's form partnerships, let's carry this discussion beyond here. And we still have other forums that we will invite you for. So thank you very much for coming, and I'm so happy to see you today. Thank you. And we also have exhibitors outside, so at your own time you can pass by the booths. Oracle is exhibiting, Green Africa Group is there, Web Africa, Fresh Life are there. We have Britam, we have Kingdom Bank, they are all outside there, so you can pass by and learn a thing or two from them. So thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Thank you so much, Seth. We can give him another round of applause. Yeah? Great. And so to get into it, we said we are eager to learn, and that is what we want to get into. So we will start off with our first panel session. The title of the panel session is Shared Value and Collective Impact, Sustainability Strategies to Accelerate Transformative Impact in a Rapidly Changing World. So to guide this conversation, we have a very dynamic, energetic moderator. She's a TV producer, she's a writer, she's an editor, she's everything that is media. Help me in welcoming Awor Odongo to the stage. She will be moderating our session and taking us through this important discussion. Karibu.
Thank you, Liz. You didn't tell me I'd be this nervous on stage. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. This is an important session, in case you haven't reflected upon it. And more on reflection, earlier on I was having a conversation with two of the warriors who'd be joining us here, and it got me reflecting, so I'd like to share that reflection. If you stepped back just a little bit and looked at the world around you right now, just do that. Just forget about the headlines for a bit. What I mean is, if you stepped back and looked at the world around you from the ground, you'll notice something interesting. You'll notice and see that it's not that we lack ideas, it's not that we lack innovation, and it's not that we lack intention. But get this, impact is still uneven. Do you agree? Impact is still not fast enough. It's slow and it's fragmented. Why is that? Why do you think that is so? Of course, it does drive a deeper question. And that question for me is, what is it that's actually transforming the future? Because transformation is not just about doing more good. I know someone would think that. Transformation is about doing how that good is designed, how it's connected, and how sustainable it is. Would you agree? And that's the basis of our conversation this morning. We want to look at how business values become social progress, how sectors move from silos to systems, and how that sustainability become not just an ambition, but a structure. So shall we get into it? Of course, I'm joined by a few panelists, as you might be aware, and right now I'd like to call upon our first. Let's welcome Winnie Jumba. She's a global sustainability ambassador and technology commercial sales manager at Oracle in Africa. Winnie, you are a firm believer in the power of tech innovation to drive positive change and economic transformation. Welcome to the panel. A round of applause, please. Great. Secondly, I'd like to call on stage Catherine Careta, the Director of Strategy and Investor Relations at Britam Holdings Group, or Britam Foundation. Catherine, you are a distinguished lawyer and investment banker, and you have shaped Kenya's financial service landscape through your leadership at Britam Foundation. A round of applause once more. Then followed by Jesse Kehuha, who leads the Non-Communicable Diseases program at CMMB. Welcome to the panel. Jesse, you are a global health and development professional with 18 years of experience in health systems, and you have strengthened stakeholder engagement, program design, resource mobilization, and research and policy advocacy. Please give him another round of applause. Now let's welcome Esther Mutuma, who is the founder and CEO of Boreka Group, a climate tech-based solution and carbon market access for smallholder farmers across Africa. Esther, you have 15 years of experience spanning banking, manufacturing, rural development, and blue carbon, and you bring a system-level approach to climate resilience and sustainable finance. Another round of applause, please. Then, finally, we have Oscar Obonyo, Sustainability Specialist at Majid Al Futem and Advisory Board of the Sustainability Champions Network. Oscar, you have pioneered the award-winning Chasing Zero initiative, advancing pathways to zero waste, zero harm, and net zero emissions in manufacturing. Another round of applause, please. So let's begin this conversation. Like I said, it's a very important conversation, and we're just going to be talking. So Winnie, I'd like to begin with you. As a global sustainability ambassador at Oracle, your work sits at the intersection of digital transformation, governance, and even sustainable innovation, particularly in expanding access through platforms like the Oracle Academy. When we talk about this work using technology to drive inclusion and long-term social impact, how would you refer to this as what was that important personal moment to you when you began this work, and also just working within the Oracle in Africa?
All right, thank you, Awara, and good afternoon, everybody. So I'll start off by talking about tech. You know, there was a bit about tech for good. And I'd look at technology as having a horizontal infrastructure. Horizontal in the sense that it's embedded not just in one particular sector, right? It's embedded in nowadays in agriculture, in finance, in legal. That's where technology is. And I would say the foundation for that is data. Managing the data and being able to handle this infrastructure, and then that's how you'll be able to understand what impact means. Technology has given us a lot of dashboards, beautiful dashboards, and we're busy putting out saying that, we are now net zero, or we have these dashboards to measure our scope 1, scope 2, or scope 3 emissions, but it's all well and good to even put them within our materiality matrices when it comes to our reporting. But without impact, how do you measure impact after that, right? And that's where now, for me, that's a defining moment in what sustainability and that would mean. So having all these results and having all these data and combining everything is, does that child who never had water before, our dashboards or whatever it is, did that lead to them now having drinking water? Can we measure that, right? And it's one thing to just keep reporting, but if you're not able to bring out that impact of what you are reporting or these dashboards or all of these reports and numbers mean, then it's simply, just having things and rearranging the furniture around and saying that, yeah, we've moved this to that, we've put a budget for ESG initiatives, but we are still trying to figure out what it means to the community and on awareness, right? So maybe I'll open it up to the rest as well.
All right, I actually would like to invite the rest of you. So beginning with Oscar, what do you think, when did your work become about impact and sustainability?
Well, my aha moment was back in 2020. While we were grappling with COVID, I was in a career crisis because I started my work in the field of impact assessment, and I realized that a lot of things we were doing, as much as we were looking at issues of environmental and social safeguards in project development, a lot of that work was centered primarily on compliance. But then when you look at the broader ESG space, you need to create a deliberate impact over and above compliance. So that splice is what kept me awake at night. And I realized that for us to create better value, number one, for our communities, who will in turn help us take care of the environment so that we can achieve that, what we call holistic sustainability focus, then we need to move out of trying to tie ourselves to the provisions for national regulations, maybe donor safeguards provisions and local ordinances, and start making deliberate, verifiable impact. And this, of course, for most businesses, realize that it comes at a quantum. It will be very different how an NGO would look at impact generation as opposed to a profit-making business. So for a profit-making business, it means that you have to set aside deliberate budget in order to support all other actors within your value chain, support communities who, at the very end of this whole conversations, are the ones who bear the brunt of all the externalities that come out of that business. And therefore, if you are deliberately able to focus capital on that kind of support, advancing innovators to be able to scale up their operations that generate positive E&S impacts, then that is where we close that gap. So I just jumped from ESS for compliance and into ESG for impact.
Oh, great. Esther, you have a whole 15 years of experience and, of course, 4 years with Boreka. What's your take on driving impact and sustainability within your space?
Yeah, thanks. I've been in this space for so long. And initially when the conversations started around global policies around impact, sustainability, being responsible for the planet and people, I remember when the Paris Agreement, Article 6 was formulated, the global conversation was around how do we move resources from the global north to the global south. And whereas there were a lot of instruments and policies around how that was going to happen, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I realized that after 10 years, almost 10 years of being in the space, I was not seeing the impact that I would have wished to see based off of those plans and strategies that had been set. And I challenged myself. I was like, it's one thing to sit and look at what's not working. It's another thing to actually set up something and try to make a difference. And so what Boreka did was set up an organization that would link the global agendas to local action to make sure that there's a clear transition of how does the whole carbon finance conversation translate to my grandmother in the village or anybody's other parent in the village? What does that really look like? And that's simply because when we look at what happens in the sustainability space, like my co-panelists have mentioned, the real impact is on that farmer on the ground whose crops failed because of the drought, who's got hit by the flood, whose yields are lower because of climate change and such related issues. So for us, where we sit is at the intersection of both finance, but also making sure that from a private sector lens, there's actual action happening on the ground and execution of projects.
Thank you. Jesse, you are in the health sector, and we know how scandalous health still is, especially in our country. So what's your take on impact and sustainability? Still the same question.
Thank you. So, important question, especially today. And I'll just break it down. I'll break it down to a very simple, picture. That suffering has a human face, and poverty, prosperity also has a human face. I think my organization has been in this space for a while, just like my co-panelists have said as well. And we primarily work in rural communities and work across the first 7 SDGs. And there are a lot of programs that have been designed and brought to Africa and to communities like the ones we serve. And oftentimes it's very, very difficult, despite the billions of dollars that are poured into these communities. Oftentimes, I walked into an office one day with a DC to visit a DC, and he said, a lot of times we see NGOs moving around with big vehicles, but it's very difficult to translate all the presence that they have into actual impact. And I think one of the things that I have been very privileged to see is a situation where there's an opportunity to co-create a solution with the local community. And one of the things that comes to mind is, for example, in the cancer space, we've collaborated with a pharma company through a PPP mechanism and established a cancer center in a county referral hospital. And that just takes the burden of out-of-pocket expenditure for patients who would have been traveling maybe 400 kilometers to Nairobi, and now they're receiving care in Kitui. And there are examples like that. But I think, like I said, is just seizing the opportunity to translate impact and seeing it having a human face.
Thank you very much. And I like that community is coming up a lot already. Catherine, you're also in a space that's actually working with communities with the Britam Foundation. When does impact become real for you, or when did it become real for you?
All right, thank you, War. So for Britam, I'll start by saying that our purpose exists to safeguard dreams and aspirations. And that has been our purpose for 60 years. So when we think about community, and when we think about why then the Britam Foundation came to life, was exactly to address the issue of how do we make sure, as a good corporate citizen, we are also able to just grow our communities as we grow our business. So for us, when we talk about sustainability and our community programs and initiatives, it's creating programs that also allow, especially the underserved, because we know the playing field is not very leveled based on your start. So how do we enable that child to have a shot at life? So you need to look after their health and well-being, and you also need to look at how they access quality education. So we thought improving or enriching lives at the community level is how we get everybody then to start safeguarding their own dreams and aspirations. And for us, impact becomes very real when we're able to have what we're doing be integrated within the systems that already exist. So we don't run our programs like a parallel initiative, but we want to make sure we integrate it with existing systems so that you have that continuity even when we step back. And that continuity is what we're talking about, that community ownership at that grassroots level for them to understand that they also have a piece of it, of themselves in this initiative, and it's in their best interest as well to work with us for continuity basis. So through formally having programs that then are looking towards enriching lives, starting all from the child, starting from the pregnant mother, because we do have a maternal program, that's how we start to look at impact, because then those in the underserved are starting to have an equal footing towards what life can be.
And I like that. We have community, we have impact-driven projects here and there. And then we have technology. Winnie, I'd like to stay with you. Where is technology stepping in to close the gaps, or what are its shortfalls from your vantage point of technology?
Thank you. I like being the first, clearly. The first thing I'd look at is in terms of shared value, right? Shared value, I would say technology should not just be seen as, okay, it's part of the situation, because when you look at sustainability and impact, I would say nowadays everything is basically backed by technology, right? It's in how we are measuring, it's in how we are reporting, but it can start off even in terms of emissions. So for instance, 92% consumption of energy can be saved because of, let's say, just making a simple decision of migrating from, let's say, on-premise infrastructure to a cloud environment. And by doing that, it has a spiral effect of managing e-waste, right? The other bit is also creating employment. The other bit is utilizing what we currently have, and also making sure that the infrastructure that's behind there is also green. So you're monitoring, and then it's better for the environment. The other bit I'd also look at is there needs to be shared data across, if for instance as Oracle, I have my data, and we have lots of databases. The main thing I'd say is there needs to be some kind of shared knowledge across all the different vendors, because then you're able to make more informed decisions rather than, and it can even be shared anonymously. Because if everyone holds on to that data, then we are able to now say, okay, based on the various standards, and I think it's 600 plus, everyone, many companies are saying we are certified on this, we have this, and we're certified on that. So what is the real standard in that particular case? So you need to be able to manage that shareability of the data. The other bit also, like for instance, through the Oracle Academy, I'd say is skill mobility. It's one thing to train, but it's another to come in and say, okay, all the different teams are certified, we've trained all the students. The things that we learned 20 years ago when I was doing my ITs, in fact, tech nowadays is so dynamic. Everyone is just singing AI, 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 AI. Everything's now AI, right? In the next 20 years, we don't even know, maybe it'll be quantum something, or some other kind of, technology. So how do we make sure that for the people, and this is now the social aspect, that the skills, people are not, because jobs are being cut if you're seeing there are massive layoffs everywhere, right? So that impact of technology, as it also enhances, how do you ensure that the skills can be transferred as we're giving certifications, that we are able to advance and create, as we create more jobs, we also don't make the previous learners obsolete. So that's one of the other areas I'd see as technology is it's very important to share that data. It's very important to have skill mobility to bridge the gap, even as technology keeps advancing. And the other bit is also managing, especially one of the gray areas, is on Scope 3 emissions. What is managed by others. We can try and control and say that Scope 1, we are managing that, our greenhouse gas emissions are managed, Scope 2, but you should be able to also trace where your suppliers and your consumers, what are they using your products for? Are they also contributing? Are you able to manage that? And I think that's one area, maybe through our technology or what we are doing, those are some of the gaps that we need to address.
Thank you for that. And to you, Catherine, your work with Britam Foundation spans capital markets and financial inclusion. And I'm just wondering, does financial inclusion enable, does it really bridge the inclusivity gap?
Yes, absolutely it does. And I'm glad you brought that up because whenever we are having, whenever we have our programs in the communities, we take an opportunity to also do financial literacy. I'll give you examples where you see people's livelihoods destroyed because of floods, for example. But if people were aware that there are products that are there to protect them in case of flooding, then having that ability to buy insurance protection would allow you to start not at the, at a basic level where you've been compensated for your losses. So when you find sometimes a farmer, all their herd has gone or all their crop has gone, it's a gap between understanding I can actually protect my livelihood and I can actually have a product that speaks to this. So as Britam, we have a Britam Connect team as well that actually creates products that are really to drive that awareness and also to make it affordable. So they're bite-sized sort of tickets for every type of mwananchi that you can actually afford to buy the protection because you never know when that risk materializes. So financial literacy is part of what we do. Conservation as well in terms of education on environment is also something we do. And when we get opportunities to engage with the communities, that's the kind of message we send, even as we're doing the other programs, is to allow them to understand that they could, even the parents in these villages, you could buy, you could have some investments, start small, start early, so that even when your children are able to go to university, you have something put aside for them. So that gap needs to be bridged, and I think there are many institutions that are looking towards we're getting products that feel that issue of maybe pricing and also issues of just not knowing that these things exist, and really the importance of protecting your livelihood. We cannot emphasize that enough. Yeah.
Right, thank you for that. And it seems ladies first, so I'll go to you, Esther. Through Boreka Group, of course, you're connecting communities to carbon credit. And my question to you is, how do these gaps translate to communities navigating climate and economic challenges on ground?
Yeah, really, really nice question. And I had a chat with you earlier before this, and I was saying that the carbon conversation is one of the most complex for a lot of people, let alone a farmer who may not be, as exposed to what's going on, the information in the world. So part of what Boreka has taken upon itself to do is to educate the farmers. We literally have an in-house curriculum developed, a climate change awareness course, which we gladly offer to anybody else who's interested, including corporates. And in that curriculum, part of what is supposed to be addressed is how do they cope and how do they take action? Because it's very dignifying for someone to feel like there's something they can do about a situation. We'll all agree that some things are beyond us. A flood or a drought is really beyond us. But to be able to think about what action can I take in my own personal local capacity that might help me mitigate this, not just for me, but for the world, for the global economy. So the way we've tried to link the opportunities to say to the farmers, this is an incentive for you to take action to protect yourself and your children in the future, but it's also good for the entire world. So you're not only doing good for yourself, you're doing good for others. And we all know there's, a lot of dignity in being able to do that, being able to know that there's something you can do about a situation that really has happened to you, not because of something you did or did not do, but because of, other factors. So by training the farmers, by being very intentional about how we onboard them, how we engage them, and how we empower them to feel like they're doing something about their own lives, we've seen a huge transition. We had one case in Kitui where a farmer who planted 100 trees, that's what they get in the first round, had 95 surviving, and 4 were really struggling, and 1 was actually dead. And he was crying over the dead 1 tree. And this is Kitui, it's a dry area, yeah, but you can see the level of passion and commitment simply because they've been trained and they've understood what it means, not only from an incentive carbon revenue perspective, which is of course a huge and big and important incentive, because of course that also cushions them in the future. When you're getting some revenue coming from the work that you've done, it cushions you from other shocks as well. But we've seen the training programs become kind of like the sounding board for them. And just to mention here is we were very deliberate on how we structured that curriculum. We literally went onto the UNFCCC website, which has the global relevance on climate change awareness. And we took the course and customized it into Kiswahili. And when we do the trainings, if we're in Kisumu or Homa Bay, we'll have local speakers to interpret certain language and certain terminologies that are very difficult for even an ordinary person to understand. If we are in Kitui, we'll have a Kamba speaking person who's able to break it down. So we've been very intentional about empowering the communities and teaching them, not really to plant the tree, but also to take action and to be part of the entire process.
Very intentional, and that's very important. And I like what you're doing with the training of communities, because just as you said, matters carbon is still quite a complex conversation that needs a lot of sensitization. And now I'll go to you, Jesse. You work with health systems, and when it comes to underserved communities, are you facing the same inequities, inequalities, despite innovation, despite the partnerships that we currently have within this sector?
Absolutely. Communities that do reside in rural areas face more complex challenges as compared to ones that would be in urban areas. One, because of the purchasing power, access issues, access to information, distances to health facilities. These are just, they continue to be complex and almost like, start a perpetual cycle that complicates further and further. One of the things that, the opportunities that we have had, and just building on to what I said earlier, is to work and build from within. Work with the community to have a solid understanding of what the problem is, and then move this to the policy makers and understand where the gaps exist. One of the panelists talked about digital solutions, and digitization has been an important enabler to delivering health information and health services. You must have seen a couple of years ago when the president launched what they call the electronic community health information system. This was a product of a lot of work from several NGOs and government, including CMMB, where we piloted several solutions. And I'll give you, just from the CMMB perspective, we went into one sub-county in Kitui, where the proportion of women who are actually coming to deliver in health facilities under skilled care was 29%. So if you count 10 women, maybe only 3 would find their way to facility-based delivery. You know, the maternal deaths at the time, you know, were figures that, you know, you'd compare them to conflict areas, you know. And one of the things that when we conducted a baseline study, 3 things came up. 1 was the issue of information. 2 was the issue of capacity of healthcare providers, you know, and of course the issues of distances. Kitui is among the top 6 most vast counties in the country. So distances from the homestead to the facility, you know, could be in some places as far as 41 kilometers. The digital solution that we rolled out at the time, you know, was a basic SMS-based platform that would send reminders to a community health worker to ensure that a particular mother who has been registered onto the platform attends all the 4 antenatal visits. That had dramatic results in itself, you know, where we saw within about a year, we saw within one sub-county, we saw you know, this moved from 29% to about 77%, you know. So the digital solutions being important enablers. And I think the other ones being, and I could give an example about, again, mobility, because again, this is a homegrown solution where you find communities telling you the distances to the facilities are quite vast, you know, and you'd find them proposing that if we had a way to ensure that our community health workers are able to move and cover at the very least 10 households in a day, you know, that would help us to ensure that more people access services and information. And we're able to collaborate with, you know, other partners and provide bicycles, you know, to community health workers. So I think looking at, from a health system strengthening perspective, working with communities and the experts and the policymakers to make sense of the problem and develop homegrown solutions, simple solutions that are sustainable for those communities.
That's very clear, and it seems while there is progress, while there are all these various solutions, there is still a disconnect. There is a disconnect between intention and the actual impact. So Jesse, I wonder, in sustainability, is responsibility genuinely shared? Is it a collective effort? Sorry, that's to you, Oscar. I did call
Yeah,
you.
I quite figured.
Sorry.
It should be a shared responsibility. Is it a shared one? That's the question. I appreciate that I work actively in industry. I'm in a profit-making business, and most profit-making businesses, of course, once you've aligned yourself with what's material for you, what you need to be focusing on, what you expect your impacts to look like, you set them and you lock it in, okay? Because the corporate language is, we are not in the business of saving the world, okay? So you pick what it is that you can do. And an ESG impact, no matter how little, is still impact. But then let's go beyond corporate. And this brings me to a different point of what I do, especially with the Sustainability Champions Network. Is there understanding across board on what shared responsibility looks like? I usually tell people that everyone, regardless of what field you are in, you are a sustainability practitioner. You only need to know what aspect of it you're impacting. And therefore, it is through forums like those that we convene that we help engage professionals who have not taken root in their own practices, trying to understand ESG, to actually know where the responsibility comes in. There is a host of practitioners within the supply chain who do not completely comprehend the impact of their work on businesses and communities, because they are the chain that connects it. If we are looking at a business, for example, accounting for its emissions, you know, it's easier to do scope 1 and 2, and then when it comes to scope 3, we start crying. But the simplest way to break it down is your scope 3 emissions are the same scope 1 and scope 2 emissions for the guys in your value chain, okay? So if I have an SME in my value chain, their primary business, of course, is going to be making profit. They're not going to be thinking, what ESG targets do I need to meet? And so, because I'm the big brother in that network, I need to access them to opportunities. I need to access them to trainings, things that they wouldn't necessarily afford by themselves, so that they know that even as a player in the value chain, if I start accounting for my scope 1 and scope 2, I'm also now exercising my responsibility towards the environment. And for me, the big brother, by extension, I am now able to cover a significant portion of my scope 3. So we are working in tandem, but everybody is doing their own work. But that can only come from a point of understanding. And that is why there is the real need. I know NGOs are very big on this, but there is the real need for us to break this corporate lingo and make sure communities understand. Communities are the center of it all. And I usually go ahead and say that over and above communities, we need to keep the children informed too. These are going to be the business leaders. They are going to be the NGO leaders of tomorrow. And as much as they are going to be revolutionizing the face of business, the face of tech, the face of interactions, they need to know that they have to grow up to be guys who are responsible for their own communities and for the planet. And if we hammer them into them right now, then I think in a decade or so, we are going to be able to cover the issue of shared responsibilities. So yes, it is supposed to be there, but I don't think we are quite yet where we need to be.
You've said quite a bit that I'd actually like to pick up on. Esther, you'd like to add?
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, I was going to speak a bit about what, in my perspective, businesses need to start doing. We have two options. Either to budget for the impact of climate-related disasters, or budget for ESG. Those are the two options available, because the reality is, if businesses don't think it's now their core business to think about sustainability or conservation, they'll soon have no business to run. One of our partners who's supported the work that we've done, we've planted 350,000 trees in the last 2 years, onboarded 2,000 farmers in 4 counties, with the support of the Nature Conservancy and the NCBA Bank. But I would like to draw out the case for NCBA Bank, because when we made our pitch to them, they understood what we were trying to do. When they were opening their Kitui branch, we said to them, this is a dry land. If the businesses here die because there's no crop production because of droughts and so on, you'll have no customers to bank. It's as simple as that. So you have the choice to budget for the issues that are related to the impact of the climate, disasters or issues that come up as a climate externality, or you can actually budget to actually carry out some preventative measures. So I would like to think about our corporate sector as a very vibrant. We have a lot of resources. When I speak in global forums, I always say Africa is rich in resource, and the reason I believe we're rich in resource is because A, we have the sun 12 hours a day, which the rest of the world doesn't have. It's only on the equator down south. So that means we can do a lot of work in terms of removing the carbon emissions from the atmosphere, and we have like a 60% potential to create a solution for the world. So if the local private sector institutions were to look internally and say, how do we take advantage of this and actually provide a solution that's a tradable solution to the world. It changes from a conversation of, oh, you know, we are paying for loss and damage, to a conversation of carbon credits are a commodity. They're like tea or coffee. We have them, you need them, we get into a discussion, it's trade. It's no longer an issue of, you know, we are getting, you know, donor support or that support. It's an issue of local entities, locally led initiatives, local private sector, taking it and seeing the business opportunity. And I was very fortunate to be in the banking sector when Equity Bank was becoming what it became. I remember we would be in meetings, in strategy meetings, and there would be conversations around, oh no, they're just a startup, they wouldn't make it, they're not going far, we don't have to worry. Until they got the masses on board. And when they got the masses on board and they were solving a problem, then the rest of the financial sector had to wake up to that moment, but it was a bit too late. And that's what I'm saying right now about the sustainability agenda. Let's not wait until it's too late to jump on board. Let's jump on board as soon as we can. Let's do a lot less talking and a bit more doing the work on the ground.
And all that you say is very valid, and I'd like to follow up on that. And I'm throwing this to you, Catherine. Community at the center of everything, but then there's also money. So are financial institutions really focused on the impact besides profitability, or is profitability taking center stage against impact?
No, I think it's both. It's intertwined, because for business to be able to give back, they of course have to be profitable so that they can also go and improve communities. So it also is value driven from business to business. What really is most important to you as a business? I started by saying we exist to safeguard dreams and aspirations, and that's our purpose as Britam Group. Then when the foundation came along, our purpose was to enrich lives. So I think that too, obviously, you need money to be able to do some of the programs and initiatives that we're talking about. I was just saying earlier to Esther, we and Jesse, that we have launched a program with UNFPA on maternal health. And the program is a 100 million program to assist women in Kwale and in Nairobi County access access to great facilities and what they need through the maternal program and also postnatal care. So you do need that. But I think the true sustainability comes in when you have what I said earlier, integrated into the system so much that even when you step outside, that program becomes continuous to that community. And when I say this, for example, in maternal health, we go into Kwale, we will capacity build with the community health promoters, with the community health workers. So where you have an information gap, and where again we've realized some women don't go to hospital because they feel that the people in hospital don't know what they're doing, you've already dealt with that by capacity building. So a lot of training, so that even how you treat patients, that kind of training is important, so that people feel when I go to hospital, there's also customer care at hospitals. Then you've also been able to build systems where people realize maybe this indicator for this means we need to do X, Y, Z, because sometimes women are dying because even at the health centers, they don't know what to do for certain cases. So once you're able to enhance the whole system, then sustainability comes in, because once you educate all those people, and also once women in these areas realize the importance of antenatal care and everything else, you won't have these problems of people shying away from health facilities and people hemorrhaging at home because they didn't go to get services that they should have. So we embed it into the system, and sustainability comes in when you step away. Will that you've already been doing thrive on its own? But initially, obviously, there's a lot of funding needed to do this. And why I agreed with you, it's a social and it's a shared responsibility, is some of this take a lot of finances. So we can bring what we have, and Oracle can bring what they have, and together then it becomes an easier burden to then execute what we need to execute and leave that community enriched and empowered for life.
Great. Let's talk a little bit more about the collective responsibility as we head towards the end of the conversation. And this goes to you, Winnie and Jesse. What does strong alignment between technology, police, and service delivery look like if we were to scale impact across all sectors?
Okay, so first, standardization is key. Standardization, and I'll start off, for instance, when the internet was coming out, we had the protocols, and it's the same. We don't have a different one for different regions. It's the same internet, right? Whether I go to the village, whether I'm here, that level, and I talked about the different standards, right? So if we're all saying that we are following, if it's ISSB or whichever, then that standard needs to be there so that, one, you avoid greenwashing, or someone saying I'm more green, and it also helps even with procurement, for instance. We are following standards and we know if it's GRI, if it's all of these, then these are the rules we're following, right? The other thing is also when it comes to the timelines, before even going to partnerships and associations. Corporates have a quarterly target and timeline, right? We have the NGOs and donor funds also using the different funding cycle. We have the government using its own cycle as well. So even as legislation and funding and all of these things, that fragmentation also creates an issue because my budgeting period is different. In corporate, I'm under pressure to give out strong results by this time. I have to make sure, so forget this, when government is ready, you'll find the rest are not ready. So that level of standardization and less fragmentation, or if we can't change it, then how do we create that synergy around it? The other bit is that it has to be at every level, right? It starts off in R&D, for instance. It's embedded within the products. The person who's, or let's say the developer, or the one who's writing the code should know, I should be able to embed this at this level rather than coming to fix things afterwards. And the question is not how do we make it successful, is when it fails, how do we double back and how do we make sure that we're able to work backwards from that point? And by the time it gets, and I like what you said, it's at all levels. It's not by the time it gets to policy makers who are trying to say, okay, let's take it out to public participation and then we'll figure it out. And then everyone comes back saying, no, I don't like this. And I think you've seen some of the bills that are coming out and they're saying, okay, the county government is in charge of this and NEMA is in charge of that. And the CS will just sign off the bill and no one, and then we end up having like 50 bills. There's SWMA, there's the EPR bill, there's all of, regulations. So that level for me is the first thing. It's at every level. Then the last thing is from a commercial perspective and for the corporates as well. You cannot have sustainability as a foundation on its own. It will never see the light of day. The shareholder will always take center stage. At that point, when I'm investing, I don't come and ask how many trees did I? Will say, I've saved my money. How much am I getting back? If I find out you've taken my savings and planted 50 trees, I'd say it's good, but I have a family to feed, right? So all of those bits, it has, in my opinion, sustainability should be at the P&L level if it's to take effect. So you add it into the P&L, if there's a cost or pricing, then when shareholders, when the corporates see that, then they come in with the capital that's sustainable. Legislation, working with the different county assemblies, it's now managing that public-private partnerships. That's how you're able to, what's in it for the community and how can we then standardize all of this across?
Right, thank you for that. I'm about to open the floor for Q&A, so please prepare your questions just before Jesse goes. And I'd like you to also tell us where we bridge the gap between competition and creating impact. because sectors are competing. In their doing more good, there's a whole competition. And the competition is also about profitability. So where do we bridge that gap? In 1 minute, please.
I think competition has been a major obstacle to impact and what we call collective impact. Where, for example, and I'll give an example of the space that we operate in is a non-governmental space, where oftentimes for the longest time there was an interpretation that NGOs and government were in competition, right? As opposed to seeing each other as complementary partners, and I think over time, I think we've seen that narrative more and more being corrected, and not just in a manner of narrative, but also in terms of action, where slowly we're beginning to see the role of NGOs being to provide solutions, to co-create solutions with government and communities, and then support government to scale, because government has unlimited resources. And I think I want to dwell a bit on government to say that I think one of the major obstacles to sustained impact has been that a lot of the development programs have been anchored in political goodwill. And when you have transitions in political regimes, then a lot of gains are eroded. I think you've seen this, and I don't need to speak this publicly, but you've seen this a lot in many instances. And I think what we need to be moving towards is a situation where you're seeing programs that are designed with communities at the center, and not as them being bystanders, but them being at the center and driving the impact and driving the solutions. I think that's one of the areas that we could really strengthen collective impact and sustainability.
All right, thank you very much for your contributions so far. So we'll go straight into Q&A. Anyone with a question? The floor is open for, yes.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Sorry. Okay, my name is Levis Ocheng from UEPA. My question goes to the panelist. Some of the best practices that the NGOs, which are now the public benefit organizations, that can be adopted to finance the activities from the corporate organizations. Some of the best practices to finance the activities from the corporate organizations. Thank you.
Okay, I'll give that question to Oscar. Just hold it. Next question. There's one. I'll take all the questions, please. So there's a question over there.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. My name is Crispus, and excellent presentations and discussions by the panelists. So my question goes to Oscar as well. You have said something very interesting, that the private sector says that they are not around to save the world. How do we address that philosophy? Because it's actually very real. If you look at, I have a very specific example, Nairobi River. But part
May I request that 30 seconds for questions and 40 seconds for answers, 40 to 1 minute, yeah? So that we can conclude this. We're already beyond time.
All right. If you look at Nairobi River, for example, and how it's polluted, a part of the reason that has happened is because of industry and the private sector. So if we continue with the same thing, the future is not very good. So how do we address this at a large scale to sort that issue? Asante.
Thank you for that. Oscar, I'll take the first question from you and I'll give it to Jesse. So you'll answer the question directed to you. Any other question? Go on. Where's the mic? Okay.
Hello, my name is Valeria from Light Up Impact. Thank you so much for the interesting discussion. My question to the panelists is about their view on financial resilience and how can we build resilient organizations in terms of their capacities in the future. Thank you.
That's definitely a Catherine question. Yeah? Okay, next.
Hello, my name is Fred Sihanya, working with Rainbow Room Foundation from Bungoma. Thank you to the panelists, quite insightful. Bottom line of my takeaway is that everyone and in us on the NGO side, community ownership. So my sense will be, how do we convince those people who are reluctant to engage in our activities when incentives are not involved, especially when incentives are not involved? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who'd like to take that? Winnie, you. Okay. Esther will take that question. One for Winnie now. We're good? Okay. Okay. Winnie, sorry. You have one. Go on.
Hi, my name is Shanta, and thank you for the lovely discussion, everybody. My question to you, Vinay, is that when we talk about sustainability, especially in health, maybe it will be just a combined thing. Most of the foundations, when they want to fund a project, and health is a very sensitive issue. Like when we talked about the women, when reaching out to the women, especially providing them antenatal health care, these are things when a lot of factors are involved, because I am also very passionate about rural health. Then you can't build a structure and help the women, and yet these women walk miles to come to that structure. So sustainability in health is a very complex issue. So how do you measure sustainability for health, especially the rural mobile health clinics?
Okay. Winnie, are you comfortable with the question? That's yeah? Okay, you can take it together. Great. So let's begin with you, Oscar. 40 seconds.
Tragedy of the commons is when people who are not directly involved in causing particular problems are actually suffering because of those problems, because someone else enacted them. It's a situation that we see as the case you have given for Nairobi River. It's a very clear-cut situation. We see it's happening in Kenya. Why? Because we have what we call the polluter pay principles. We have, NEMA enforces the polluter pay regulations, but if you go along Nairobi River, the businesses that actually spew effluent into them, they are very confident that even if they do nothing in their power to address it, the amount that they're going to be charged as penalty is less than the amount they would have spent complying. So now that is a gap between the business and the regulator. And we need to have joint conversations to have that bridged, because at the end of the day, the polluter needs to pay, and they need to pay harshly for the kind of things that they cause communities to suffer. Businesses talking about not our business to save the world, that originated from the point of how does sustainability impact our balance sheets? What does it do to our bottom line? So if the person sitting in finance does not understand it, they most likely are not going to approve even what you would call a socially responsible initiative. So again, it behoves the sustainability or ESG professionals in the organizations to find a way to communicate that. But I am glad that as from next year, 2027, public interest entities are going to be required to undertake those non-financial disclosures, okay, mandatorily. And I think ISPAC is at the center of ensuring such kinds of compliance. And I'm sure with the trajectory that Kenya takes in regulations, that is going to trickle down even to non-public interest entity companies, and that might help solve the problem. But it's not a conversation that we are likely to stop hearing, because at the end of the day, it's still going to be difficult to get an organization to solve issues to do with maybe community hunger if their business does not directly impact or is not directly impacted by that community situation. So it all falls down on materiality and what's essential for business continuity.
Oscar, that was beyond 40 seconds.
I'll try save 10 for
Please.
him. So Fred, to answer your question on how do we convince people who don't see financial incentives into getting involved, is, in my opinion right now, having done this for the last 16, 17 years now, it's creating awareness. It's creating awareness, it's advocacy, it's being in the right rooms, and every time you get an opportunity to be in the right room with the right people, speak about what you believe in, and eventually people are going to catch on, and the awareness that's created is going to become a ripple effect. Today, I might end up convincing my colleagues on the panel that maybe businesses should care about hunger, even though that's not their core business. So as we keep talking and creating awareness, the tide of time changes the way people perceive and think about issues.
Thank you. Jesse.
The question was really around some of the best practices that you find in the development space. And I think I want to just mention three. One is always looking at solutions that are value-driven. And some of the values include trust, collaboration, looking at impact, and being human-centric. I think the other important value or principle that guides some of the work that development partners do is ensuring that when you're building solutions, having sustainability in mind and pursuing multiple funding streams, either through public-private partnerships, co-investments, co-funding mechanisms, just to ensure that things don't stop. And I think the last thing I want to talk about is solutions that are evidence-driven, such that let us document and capture lessons from ongoing solutions, so that then the evidence and the lessons that you generate now inform the next investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine.
So the question on financial resilience, I think, companies will go through a lot of volatility depending on what's going on in the geopolitics or just in the market space. But their ability to survive is also based on their ability to listen to your customer, your ability to innovate for your customer, and also your ability to quickly innovate for the changing landscape that you're in. So that's one of the things that would make a company resilient and also build capacity for the future. But also what we've also seen is the consumer now, your customer, demands an organization to do business with that is also in touch with giving back to communities, that employees also want to work for organizations that are doing good for community. So if you look at our employee service today, a lot of people would not be at Britam if it wasn't for the good that we're doing in society. So I think consumer behavior has changed, so has also their heart and where they want to put their money. So I think listening to customers and also adapting quickly for them. Like during COVID, a lot of people with life covers may not have had the money to pay those premiums, but if you restructure, you're working with them during difficult situations, and banks have done that as well. So how quickly are you adapting to accommodate your customer, especially when there's a shock that has touched on everybody in the system?
Thanks. Thank you, Catherine. Winnie?
All right, so mine was a one on health and access to health systems from those in rural areas. So I'll quickly touch on it, and then I can also leave it open. So one I'd say is public-private partnerships. You need organizations with lobbying power to also engage with the government as well. A lot of the health systems and a lot of the structures that we have in place are basically, it's a mandate of the government, but also it needs to start from the county level, right? You need to work together with the county because they are the ones, this is their responsibility. But at the end of the day, accountability lies with who? And this is where mandatory reviews need to happen because we've got bills, we've got different acts and different regulations, but they have no end in sight, right? One, we don't know when they'll come out. So we put it out there, we say that, does it need 6 months, does it need 3 months? When do we ensure that these come out? And even as they come out, and then we enforce them, and then budgets are given, there has to be a period. So you'll find some places like in Japan, every biennial, every 2 years, those reviews have to happen to make sure that we are able to change and make sure that we adapt. The other bit I would say is, for instance, with the various NGOs leaving the country, we need to look at maybe create competitive scenarios for other private organizations to take over some of the orphan projects or some of the orphan donations that were done. So if you create a system, and I'm trying to remember the name, if you create a system where other private organizations can competitively take over some of these orphan projects, then that would also enhance sustainability. But if you just leave it to one particular area, then you'd probably find that some of these projects and some of the work that we're doing, especially on that end, they all start off with good intention, but then they tend to fizzle because accountability, legislation and governance is missing, and policy to support that, and constant reviews.
Thank you very much for joining the conversation this afternoon and for answering all the questions promptly. And I think that we can all agree that this conversation has been quite impactful. And it does leave us with a reflection again that it's not that we lack solutions, right? And again, just as I began during the intro, it's not that we lack ideas, innovation, or intention, we have all that. But we can conclude by saying it takes a collective action for us to actually get where we need to get. And so the question to what is actually transforming the future is about collective responsibility from my inference. It's about coming together, working together, and not just competing because we want to be the best. We want to be the ones that's making more profit. We want to be the one who's impacting many communities. But it's about let's come together and create this impact together. Agreed? Thank you very much for being part of the conversation once more, and we've just come to the end of it. Oscar, Esther, Jesse, Catherine, Winnie, you are all warriors for good. Thank you very much for being part of this. Great, so as we come to the end of it, we'll just take maybe 2 of your minutes so that we can take a photo before we leave this stage. Yeah.
We can give them another round of applause as they take the photo. Great. And before you leave stage, Seth will also join you for the group photo. Now there's gender balance. Ah. Ah. I think, gentlemen, come to the other end. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's take the photo. Let's take the photo. Thank you so much. Another round of applause as they step out the stage. How are we feeling? Have we learned a lot? That was a powerful conversation. Thank you so much, Awor and the panelists. I think it is undisputable. We have the knowledge, we have the skills, and we have the resources to build locally grounded solutions, right? And our panelists are proof that innovations are turning into solutions that are reaching the community, systems influence, you know, all these things we can do if we are intentional, as one of the panelists said. And at the end of the day, the real test is on whether these solutions reach the people that we target. Are the communities feeling the impact? And not only for a short period of time, but we need to ensure that that impact is lasting and sustainable, right? Great. So I hope we are not very tired. The learning is yet to come to a conclusion. We will get into another session. We want to now invite a speaker. The guys who were moving the podium. Anyone in the room? All right. As we get it done, we will have 2 case studies, presentations by 2 very powerful innovators. Our first innovator uses football. How many of us played football when we were young? Okay, great. Hey, which other games did we play? Even the small ball that we used to create with papers and hit around the neighborhood is also football. How many of us played football? You did? Oh, now you did, yes? Great. So all of us have kicked a ball at some point. Great. So football as infrastructure, building solidarity for women's health in Africa. So our speaker is a social innovator, and he is using sport as a powerful tool for youth empowerment and community transformation. His name is Brian Wesala. He is the founder and president of the Football Foundation for Africa, a Nairobi-based organization using football as a driver of sustainable development, youth empowerment, and social change across the continent. He is widely recognized for advanced grassroots football, ethical governance, and innovative business models in African sport. So a solution can come from anything, right? Innovation is anything and everything, as long as you identify the needs, the challenge, and you provide a solution. Yes? Let's give a round of applause for Brian. I'm not sure whether he looks like he plays football. Does he look like he plays football? He's looking sharp. Oh, he does. He does. Nice. All right. Karibu sana.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I actually still play football, just to satisfy the curiosity. And I'm also very surprised that not many people in the room have played football. This is the first time I'm in a room where a majority of the people did not raise their hand if they were asked whether they have played football at some point in their lives. But I am sure if I asked how many of you support Man City, Arsenal, Manchester United, then the hands would go up. How many Arsenal fans are in the room? 1, 2. Yeah, they're not very loyal at the moment. I'm one of them, so don't worry. Yeah. It's been another difficult season, but that's life. Yeah, next season is happen. Anyway, so Yeah, like I said, my name is Brian Wesala. I'm the founder and CEO of the Football Foundation for Africa. It's an organization I set up. Now we are doing our 8th year. And just by background, I am a computer science trained. I worked in the IT field for 10 years before deciding to leave that and follow my passion. And more important, see if I can make a positive change in an industry that I'm very passionate about and that I believe has the potential really to transform our country and our continent if well managed, if well governed. So I set up the Football Foundation for Africa with the sole aim of driving more investment into grassroots football, realizing that whatever we have or whatever we think of as a football industry, and I know we also know the billions of dollars that we hear, especially in the developed markets, developed economies. There's a lot of money in that industry, but for me, when I looked at my country, when I looked at my continent, not really much is happening in terms of seeing football as a business, as an area that can create lots of employment, not just as players, but the whole ecosystem. It can absorb so many of our young people and give them productive jobs. So that's what I set out to address with the Football Foundation for Africa. And if I can just ask the guy to move the slide a bit so that I can start by introducing the organization. Thank you. So the Football Foundation for Africa, it's a Pan-African social enterprise that's working to drive investment into grassroots football development and deploying football as a platform for social and economic development. Initially, when I started, I was organizing football tournaments and using them as a platform to connect young people to opportunities. That's job opportunities, as well as playing opportunities. But because of how things developed, especially during the COVID time, we had a major challenge and we had to shift a lot of our activities online. And that's when I started to organize what I call the Africa Football Business Show. I was educating the industry around the business of sports, where I see Africa really lagging. And then as I was organizing the Africa Football Business Show, I also realized, there's a need for us to create an African agenda around football, around sports. So I started to organize the Africa Football Business Summit. And that's our first initiative that you see there. So a similar platform to what we have here at Warriors for Good Summit, but bringing together sports industry stakeholders and adjacent players to see how we can really develop a sustainable football ecosystem in Africa. And then the second initiative we have, which will be, as I mentioned, Africa Football Business Show. We are soon relaunching that as AFBS Live, which now will be like an ongoing discussion around the business of sports that keeps the spirit and the knowledge of the Africa Football Business Summit going. But the core of our work really, and what I want to talk about today, is what we have developed as a platform, and that's the Africa Football Development Network. It's a grassroots delivery backbone that we are using to implement one of the concepts that we have come up with recently. You heard from the theme, football as infrastructure. So this platform has networks of over 150 football communities. These are academies, clubs, and organizations using football in one way or the other to drive social and economic development. So we are not just in East and Central Africa, that's a mistake, but we are across Africa, Ghana, Nigeria. We have members across the continent. And really the idea was to see how we could leverage economies of scale to bring in more investment into the grassroots. Because I'm sure you observed how football academies are sprouting all over the country, sprouting all over the continent. But in my view, they have a very narrow focus, and that has been about talent development and trying to export talent, or selling talent to Europe. That business model, in my view, has not worked well for the continent. And as a result, the ecosystem is very fragmented and cannot attract investment. So in creating the Africa Football Development Network is to try and reduce fragmentation and then be able to communicate to potential investors, as you will see later, our government, the private sector, and be able to showcase using data the value of investing in the football ecosystem. Next slide, please. So how is Africa using football, and why is this not working? As I said, I've been at this for the last 8 years, 10, because before that I was also just blogging on my private blog around football. And really my mind has been asking, how come African football cannot attract the kind of money that we see in other markets, especially in Europe and now increasingly in the Middle East? And I realized it's because of how we were positioning or packaging football for its potential investors. One, we know football is entertainment. That's why we have, Chelsea, Man City fans. If you hear locally, Gor Mahia, FC Leopards, Shabana. I don't know how many of you watch local football, by the way. I'm interested in that as well. But you see, when you position football only as entertainment, then it is left at the discretion of the one who is spending to invest or not. That's you as an individual or even a corporate organization. Because as an individual, you have a choice to either go and watch a match at the stadium or to pay for your Netflix subscription or do something else with that money. So that's, and for corporates, if you're looking for visibility, nowadays it's a very weak argument when you have social media where corporates can invest in influencer marketing and this kind and gain even more visibility than football as a platform would be able to give them. Secondly, football has become like a charity case. We're always talking about, we are doing good by, making sports, making football. We have teams and we're helping kids to do this and this. Again, that kind of appeals only to the corporate conscience or to you as an individual. A charity kind of, which again is not sustainable. Thirdly, which is very common in Africa, it's around talent development and export. So this is a very extractive model where our best talents usually find their way to Europe in one way or the other. But if you look at the value that accrues back into the continent, into the country, it's very little. So we have big stars in global platforms playing football. We know the Sadio Manes, the Drogbas, Kudus, who are really in top leagues. But if you look at the amount of money that is made when they make it to those European leagues and compared to what accrues back to the continent, it's very little. So very little is being invested back. And lastly is the sport for development approach, which is close to what I want to propose as football as infrastructure. The sport for development approach uses different sports to, say, achieve health. We've been talking about health today, education. So it's kind of, let's do sport and then something else. So you're using football as a vehicle embedded in our society. I can tell you for sure that you can't go a kilometer radius without finding a group of people congregating somewhere to play football across the world. So with this in mind is when I came to the realization that we should really position football as infrastructure, especially in the African context, the African continent. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I think I'll go quickly through this because when I talk about football as infrastructure, many people say it's similar to sport for development, but it's not. For me, when you say football as infrastructure, it recognizes the intrinsic value of football. So football is not an instrument to achieve something. It's already achieving a lot in our continent. Sport for development is very program dependent. So that, if you're running a sport for development program that has been funded, and a lot of it is also externally funded, when the funding stops, the impact stops. But people don't stop playing football. People don't stop engaging in sports. So we have to think of sports, of football, as infrastructure. As I said, the value is usually from outside the system. So we have this also kind of donor-dependent approach, as opposed to us realizing what this platform is delivering and designing really our business model around that. So with football, with sports for development, we ask what can we deliver through football? But when it comes to football as infrastructure, we are already saying football is delivering value. But how do we design an ecosystem that appreciates this thing is driving a lot of value, giving people identity, helping people to congregate regularly, and then design a business model around that. Next slide, please. So as you can see, football already functions as infrastructure. It reorganizes communities. You saw tournaments. We see the major tournaments, for example. Last year here we had the CHAN. You saw what the country, for a whole month, everybody was just focusing on football. We are going to have AFCON next year. But even more important is the tournaments that happen at the grassroots level and how they help to, organize or reorganize those grassroots landscapes. Sorry. You can just keep the slides on. I think it's okay. Thanks. Football also mobilizes capital. Clubs, leagues, money is invested into these ecosystem. Football shapes governance norms. I'll mention something later around, the solidarity payments that, we see in the transfer market and how that can be used, for example, even to finance health when it comes to, women's development. Next slide. Yeah, so this is just a comparison of what infrastructure, these are the traditional fields that we think of as infrastructure, and then comparing that to football. So for example, infrastructure has an enabling function. It connects markets and people. Roads connects people. That's why we build roads. Football does the same. It enables health, education, employment. So many people are employed in the football ecosystem. So, for example, our government should be looking at these from a data perspective so that it can inform how much they invest in the football sports space. The network effect of football. The more users we have, the more people use a road, the better or the more connected we are. Similar, more participants we have in the football space, the better the health outcomes. Participating in sports is proven to have, health outcomes. You can just maintain the slides if. Yeah. So football is a public good, but here I'll put a small disclaimer. It can also be a public bad, and that needs to be researched a lot, because we usually assume that everything that happens when you say, okay, we are occupying our children productively by making sure they're participating in sports. But these same networks, these same ecosystems have been known to promote, for example, crime among young people. So even as a government, as society, you should be keen about what is happening in the football space. Then sports and football have long-term returns. It's not just about quick profits, and I'm glad from the panel discussions, there was those discussions around how businesses, view their investment. Not everything is about, the balance sheet and annual returns. Can we start to look at sports as an infrastructure that has long-term benefits for our people, and that's in the areas of, human capital, youth empowerment, stability, social cohesion, unity in our country. And then, of course, there's the multiplier effects of football around, health, education, employment, and governance. Next slide. So, again, people usually, whenever I talk about football, people say, why football and not other sports? Initially, I'll just explain that as a passion thing, because I played football, I still play, it's a game I love. But also more and more as I try to understand the space, the football ecosystem, I realized we need to invest football as an anchor tenant in the wider sports ecosystem, because football drives the numbers globally and in Africa. So it's like an anchor tenant, the same we have like a Carrefour, for example, in the mall. If we have a good anchor tenant for your mall, then the whole mall works better. And that's the same for our sports industry. If you're going to develop a sustainable sports industry, then we need to invest well in football. Next slide, as I think I'm running out of time. So these are some of the areas where really we see football operating as infrastructure. It's able to deliver health outcomes, using these teams, clubs, tournaments as platforms for health screenings and things like that. People have talked about accessing people, but people are already congregating in football spaces. So how can we use that? Football, of course, promotes education, employment. We've talked about climate. We're building stadiums across the country, but do we have climate in consideration? Can they be designed in such a way that, for example, they can harvest rainwater? Can they be designed so that they can become mini grids for solar energy? And this is what it means to really design a sustainable ecosystem. Because what we are seeing now is a lot of investment into infrastructure, but without clear pathways as to how we are going to recoup these investments. So this needs to be designed, this needs to be a matter of policy. Then of course there's social cohesion, sports promotes unity, but again we should be careful, it can also promote division, for example between Man City and Arsenal fans, but also at Gor Mahia and FC Leopards. So these are some of the things that we should really have in mind as we talk about football. Next slide. Yeah, so our Africa Football Development Network, I can share the link for those who are interested later. It has over 150 trusted community access points. These are the academies and clubs that we are talking about. And the reach is more than 100,000. And this is not something that we have really pushed out there. It's organic growth that we have experienced through our Africa Football Development Network. We are currently designing pilots in Kenya and in Ghana, and these are focused around women's health. We know now there is also a big push to get more women into football, but we have to ask ourselves, what will be the gains of getting more of our women playing football? And that's why we are focused on this area of health and really understanding how can football drive health outcomes and how can that now be translated into value propositions that we can use to attract investment from government, from the international development sector, from the private sector, in really creating a sustainable sports ecosystem. Next slide, I think I'm all done now. So these are the people we want to talk to really as the Football Foundation for Africa with our AFDN, which will soon be registered as its own for-profit organization. As we're talking about models, ours is a hybrid social enterprise. So ministries of health and sports, global health funders such as the Gates Foundation, they announced $2.5 billion that they are going to spend on health in Africa. How can we use innovative models such as ours to attract this kind of money? Then corporate health partners, we know insurance companies are big in the health space, and also women's health innovators. So those who are passionate about women's health and innovation around women's health, I'd be keen to talk to you. We also have our partners, Policy Strategy Group, who help us in that area. But really one of the reasons why we attend such events is to meet people who are experts in that which we want to achieve. So if there are any women's health innovators in the room who would like to share more around what we are doing with the Africa Football Development Network and see where you could plug in. I think the last slide now. I think this can be last. Also, this we can skip this. This is just some data that I had come up with on the Kenya case and how things work. And then this is really like summarizing how we are trying to understand, because there's two things involved here. First is looking at football as delivery infrastructure, but also in our conversation, we met an organization that was trying to look at the solidarity and transfer payments that happen in the football ecosystem, and they were trying to see how that can be adopted for the health ecosystem, because community health funding, they were explaining there is a big challenge there, and now they were looking at us who are in the football space who have something that is working. Sorry, I think I can share more later. Otherwise, I think you get the grip of what we are doing. In view of time, I would love to engage you with you more and explain more about what we are doing at the Football Foundation for Africa with my colleagues in the room. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Brian. A round of applause for that warrior for good. And that is the beauty of social innovation, reimagining what exists to drive actual change within the society. Thank you so much, Brian. He will be with us for dinner. As we have dinner, feel free to interact with him, ask questions, catch up if you have any, and find out more, maybe about what they do or how we can support him to continue that great initiative. I'll invite our next speaker, who is our last case study for today. Her name is Mary. Mary, you look surprised. Mary is a Kenyan engineer, researcher, and sustainability leader currently serving as the Research and Development Manager at Hako Industries Limited, and a founder of the Women in STEM Summit. She's recognized for advancing industrial innovation, circular economy practices, and empowering women in science and engineering. So, karibu sana Mary. You need the podium? Okay. Let's give us a minute. And if you have her slides, you can cue them up. No slides? All right. No, up here. Can you see her? No, bring her up. Bring her up. Thank you so much. All right, let's give Mary a clap as she starts. Mary, you have 10 minutes. Oh, less than that, perfect.
Good evening. Are we well? Okay, we'll use less than 10 minutes. I just want to share a story, and I'll be so brief. So I'm in the manufacturing industries, an area that so passionate about industrialization in this nation because of what industries can do. And whenever I see an industry relocating to another country, it hurts me so much. Anyway, I know we have had a lot. We cannot have this conversation without mentioning reducing, reusing, repurposing. We can't have these conversations without talking about carbon emissions, waste management, energy efficiencies. But I want us to take a different angle that it's so dear into my heart, and it's a positioning of industries. And I will start by giving you a story. So let me tell you about Jane. Jane grows sunflower seeds on a 2 acres land in Nakuru County. 3 years ago, she would sell her harvest at whatever price the middleman offered. She faced inconsistency and predictability, and it was never enough. Today, Jane has a guaranteed offtake contract with a local industry, a pipeline that helps her sell her sunflower seeds to an oil extractor, and that oil is sold to industry to be used in cosmetics. Her income has become predictable. Her children go to school without interruption. And last month, she installed a water tank at her home. All this facilitated entirely by the proceedings of her sunflower crop. Just hold on there. That water tank has now become the new measure of social impact. So when most people think of research and development in manufacturing industry, they picture products improvement. They see a department that exists to innovate products. The current industrialization has widened the scope and that definition. Now, research and development, who are the formulators, the founders, the kitchen of these industries, have become the socio-economic engines. And now industries are measuring different metrics in addition to the existing ones. For example, the school fees we have paid, the wells that are being done, the households that are now accessing clean water for the first time. So, but to understand why this matters, we need to understand the responsibility that comes with being a local manufacturer in Kenya, a local industry in a setup like Kenya. So local industries have evolved, and this is the call of sustainability to all of us, into moving into dimensions of beyond buyers, into the dimensions of anchors. Every time local industries are sourcing local materials locally, for example, natural oils, hide for leather, we are making decisions that ripples through the entire community. And I know today we have heard a lot about community-centric decisions in our tables. The question we ask ourselves is not only does this meet our specifications, but we are transferring knowledge that will help farmers meet international standards consistently and season after season. And this is where I want us, all of us, to bring our brain into. We are all proud of one thing that is called Made in Kenya. Does that mean something to us? If it does not synonymously align with quality, then we must ask ourselves, what are we positioning Made in Kenya as, whether services or products? We must go beyond a market tagline and serve as a lived standard. And you know what this translates into? Today, it translates into that farmer in Kirinyaga or that oil instructor in Thika can stand behind this in boldness and confidence. That is the anchor role of the local industries that we must step into. It is not a call of charity, it is beyond charity and patronage. It's about technical partnership and technical transfer. As local manufacturers, we must track these three things. First is household income stability. When our extraction standards are consistent, farmers receive consistent payments, and this consistency puts food on the table in January, the hardest month, and also during the harvest times. The second thing that we are monitoring is school enrollment continuity. In communities where we are actively procuring raw materials from, the parents now are telling us that their children no longer miss school during the lean seasons. There is guarantee markets, meaning guarantee school fees. The third dimension, which it must stop our tracks, is clean water access. Families who previously walked kilometers for water are now installing tanks at home, funded direct from crop proceedings. The industries now must plan on how to align with these metrics and chase them deliberately. Allow me to go to something that I would call my conclusion. Impact at scale is not built alone. It is built when efforts and local ecosystems point to the same directions. Now, local sourcing is no longer a risk mitigation fallback. It is our competitive edge as industries. It is how we build manufacturing sector that is resilient, that is rooted, that can look at smallholder farmer in the eye and say, your quality made it on the shelf in Nairobi and made it in the shelf in the East Africa community and in COMESA and beyond. If we are able to track that impact in the face of a farmer in the village in Kenya, then Made in Kenya will be intentional and will be of quality. Therefore, the call to build quality products made in Kenya must be intentional, and we shall prove one water tank, one school town, one guarantee offtake at a time. That when we invest in quality at source, we won't improve a product, we will transform a nation from the ground up. That is the value of cascading quality. Let me tell you, I have seen what school fees means to a girl child who had lost hope of education. I have seen what water tank means to a mother who no longer walks at dawn to go find clean water. Those images live with me. It is why I go to work to develop local farmers and SMEs. Kenya needs its own industries to stand up, anchor deep, and pull. Drive quality because that mother serves quality and a world-class view. Who will drive this world-class view in the eyes of our farmers if it is not us, the local industries in Kenya? And that is my story in my work at Hako Industries. Thank you so much.